definitely would like to thank you for coming to our office.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, comrade. Right away, I'm sure I've shocked the people. They said, wait a minute, he's mastered the English language. Well, yes, I have, quite frankly.
One of our first questions we usually ask everybody is how you broke into the wrestling business.
Well, quite an interesting story. I think probably quite unique for most of the other people, or most of the other guys who've been in the business. The old traditional way was, you either grew up in it as your father wrestled or someone in your family wrestled, or you were very close and very tight with somebody who wrestled in the wrestling business. It was a very closed-knit, closed group of people. And I broke in. I was actually training for a professional football tryout with the United States Football League, and I had a tryout lined up with the Tampa Bay Bandits. And so I'd spent about a year and a half in the gym working out at the particular time. And I was actually rehabilitating from a broken leg. I broke my leg my senior year playing football. And I got a phone call at 9 o'clock one morning. And it was from a guy by the name of Animal of the Road Warriors, who had become a good personal friend of mine. And actually, little known fact, I recruited him to the junior college where we were playing football. And that's where we first met. And he gave me a call that morning. He said, what do you think about wrestling? And my comment was, well, I think you guys are doing great. And he said, no. He said, what do you think about wrestling? I said, you mean like me getting in the ring and wrestling? He says, yeah. I said, well, let me think about it. And I said, what do I have to do? I guess what I thought was at the time, I thought, well, if they can do it, I can give it a shot. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, then I still got the tryout with the Tampa Bay Bandits. And my next question was, what do I have to do? And do they know that I've never been in the ring, never hit a ring rope, have absolutely zero experience? Oh, yeah. I told them all that. I said, okay, well, what do I have to do? He said, well, call this guy, Jim Crockett, down in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I hung up the phone. I called Jim Crockett, and quite frankly, I told him right up front, I said, Mr. Crockett, I just want to tell you, I've never been in a ring, never hit a ring rope, and knowing his sense of humor now, I didn't know it at the time, but he was like, what are you talking about? They told me he had all kinds of experience, and I said, well, no, sir, I've had none. So it was interesting. He said, well, be in my office with your head shaved bald on June 4th. This was in 1984, and I thought, okay, well, so far so good. I can do that. I said, I'll see you there. And so I walked into his office that day, and I, again, I'd spent a year and a half in the gym, and I'd already spent several years working out anyway, but about 8 hours a day in the gym. So I was at physical peak performance. I was 285 pounds, 8% body fat, 34-inch waist, traps up past my ears, and walked in and introduced myself, and Jim Crockett took a look at me, took a second look, took a third take, and he said, take your shirt off. And took my shirt off, and I was there. And he said, wait right here. So he walked out and came in with Ivan Koloff and Don Kernoodle, who were the world tag team champions at the time. And he said, take a look at your new partner. And they looked at me, and they looked at each other, and they looked at me, and they looked at each other. They're like, who's this guy, And they were cutting interviews, actually, at the time. And he said, here's the deal. Every time they walk out for an interview, you walk out behind them, cross your arms, and look me. And I thought, so far, so good. I can do that, too. I can shave my head. I can look mean. Got that down pat. And so we cut interviews all afternoon. And then when we finished the interviews, they said, you'll wrestle tomorrow night. They had a big 4-hour television taping in Raleigh. In fact, it's kind of the who's who of wrestling was there. Dusty Rhodes, King Kong Bundy, just a bunch of guys were there. And I said, you'll wrestle, get to the town early, and the guys will work out with you a little bit, and you'll have a TV match. And so I'm walking in cold, Well, to finish the story, we got to the town late, so Crockett was not very happy. In fact, it was really hot. And Ivan went to him and said, we got in the ring. We were in the ring maybe 5 minutes. And we came, we got to get out of the ring, and Ivan went to Crockett. He wasn't going to let me wrestle, and he talked to me to let me wrestle. And Ivan came to me and said, whatever you do, Nikita, he said, don't trip on the ropes, get in the ring. Because apparently Crockett said if he trips on the ropes, he's history. He's out of here. And so that was the beginning of the story. I ended up having the match that night. It went about 13 seconds. It was at the time, a television record. They had never had a match that fast on television. And that was the beginning of the story.
Did you get trained by anybody?
Well, and then from there, what carried on was kind of on-the-job training, if you will. Ivan and Don and I would get to the towns a couple hours early for the next couple months, and we'd work out in the ring, and I'd have a single match that lasts about 15 seconds each night. And Ivan and Don would have the main event because they were the world tag champions. And Ivan would sit in my corner. I'd sit in Ivan's corner. And he'd watch my match. I'd watch their match. And then at the end of the night, in the car or wherever we were headed off to, we just talk. Ivan would critique what I was doing, or I'd ask questions. Why did you do this? So I began learning the psychology of the business very quickly.
So Ivan was pretty much your mentor.
Ivan was no question my mentor. Don Cronota was instrumental as well in my learning of the business. But Ivan, maybe a lot of people have asked you as I travel now, is he really your uncle? Well, no, he's not, but he should have been. He was as much an uncle to me as anybody had ever been, and really took me under his wing and really taught me the business, the old school business.
Were you a fan growing up watching wrestling, or?
I wasn't necessarily a major fan, growing up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, of course, home of the AWA and Vern Gagne. And interestingly enough, not a lot of people know, but Vern would graduate from Robbinsdale High School, which is where I graduated from, of course, many years later. But I would flip through the channels and watch it a little bit here and there. Where I really began to gain some interest in it was when we started working out at Jesse Ventura's gym. He had a gym in Minneapolis called Ventura's Gym, and so we kind of hung around him, got to know him a little bit, and that was pretty cool at the time. I was in college, and so that was kind of a cool thing to do. And so I'd flip it on, and usually just to watch him. And then once he was off, so I really didn't have I wasn't an avid fan, I guess you'd say, growing up.
What were your first impressions of the road, as far as being around the boys and stuff like that? Well,
again, it was an interesting character that I developed because one of the things I did when I broke in, and the whole storyline was, I was Ivan's nephew just coming right off the boat, so I spoke no English. And as with anything I've ever done, I took it to 110th degree in that I decided that speaking no English, I wasn't going to speak any English anywhere. And so I didn't speak in the locker rooms. The only place I really spoke was in the car with Ivan. In fact, when I first got my apartment in Charlotte, Ivan took me around to the apartment, took me around to the phone company, to the power company, co-signed for everything. And everybody was told the same story. I spoke no English. And when I went to the gym, funny story, the first time I went to Gold's Gym in Charlotte, paid $25. They signed me up. And I'm working out, and I've condensed the story, but several months went by, and I got to know the manager a little bit. But even prior to that, though, the first day I was there, I should back up a second and say, the owner came in, he looked at me, and he said, hey, I'm going to have to double your membership. You're too big to be working out in this gym. And I just looked at him, and I just went, and walked away. And I could tell the expression of the guy's face. He was like, who's this jerk, And I saw the manager run over to him and explain to him, oh, you don't know any English? He was like, oh, okay. Well, several months went by. I'm talking like from June till October. And one day Roger, the manager, came in and he said, and it's funny why when you think somebody doesn't speak English, you think if you slow down the English language, they'll understand, right? He came up to me one day and he went, Nikita, we need, and he's like, scratch his head. How can I get there? He said, we need money, membership, money. Like that. This is exactly how he's talking to me, right? And I'm just totally in character. What happened is they've been watching the TV, watching me hang guys with chains, and the whole thing. Nobody would talk to me. So they never asked for any more membership dues from that first $25 I paid in June. Months went by, and so I just, I'm doing the puppy dog thing with Roger, like, don't understand. He's like, money, membership, money, and I'm like, I don't understand, right? I just walked away from him. Well, the next day, here comes Pete, right? And Pete, same thing. Nikita, we need membership, money, right? And I'm just doing the same thing with Pete, just like the puppy dog. And like, and he scratches his head. He's like, how can I get through this? He says, can you bring Ivan here tomorrow? And, I look at my, and of course, now remember I said I took the business serious, and right? So I actually was studying Russian those first few months. And so Dyadia was Russian for uncle. So I said, Dyadia Ivan. And he went, yes. yes, he heard Ivan, right? Yes, can you bring him here tomorrow? And I brought $25 the next day, and paid it off.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.